Memphis Grizzlies star point guard Ja Morant, right? The initial report said that he was going to be suspended 2 games. And if you hadn't, if you're not familiar with the situation, he was displaying a handgun on his Instagram live, right? And again, he was originally given 2 games suspension, but now reports are saying that he's gonna be suspended indefinitely, right? So basically, just want to ask you guys, right? Like, of this situation, like what does John need to take away from it?
Well, I first want to clarify. I think that the remaining time, the additional time he's going to be away from the team, I think is a self decision. Taylor Jenkins, head coach of the Memphis Grizzlies, came out and said that there's no timetable for his return. I don't think that's league given. I think that's Ja really taking time for himself to kind of figure out, what he needs to do to be better. But I will say this, I've had the privilege of meeting Ja Morant a few times and being in his presence, and I want to preface this by saying he's a really, really good person. I've seen him tip, somebody $600 for a $50 bill. Like, he has a good heart. He's still very young, and I think he's figuring life out, and I think he's figuring things out. None of us are perfect. I think that, the difference between athletes and regular people is that they do it under a scrutinizing spotlight. With that said, heavy is the head that wears the crown. And he has a lot of responsibility, and he's a walking business. He's a walking brand. He's one of the faces of the NBA. And sometimes that pressure and it happening so quickly is not something that's easily dealt with. And I know that people have a lot of opinions on his persona and what's true, what's not true, how he's grown up, how he hasn't grown up, if he's perpetrating a fraud, things like that. But I think that it's also important to remember that at the end of the day, this is a person. And he came out and said in a statement that he needs to learn how to manage his stresses better. And what that means to me is that he uses outside sources, whether that's drinking, whether that's partying, whether that's the tough guy persona, to mask maybe stresses and insecurities that he may have as a rising star in this league. So I think it's very important to approach this story with that level of sensitivity. You can have your opinions, you can have your thoughts, and everyone's entitled to them. But some of the things that have been unfortunate for me to see in the past few days are people making assumptions about what he's affiliated with, what he's doing, what he's not doing. And I think that in every story, especially when people are involved, there should be a level of grace given and a level of understanding given that we're not perfect. People make mistakes. That's not justifying what he's done. And that's not, overriding the fact that he deserved to be punished. And he was suspended. And I think it's also important to remember, though, that he may be dealing with things that we don't see. There are things lying under the surface that everybody, from the outside looking in, he's a star basketball player, just got his own signature shoe. He's the face of the Memphis Grizzlies. He makes all this money. His life should be perfect. And if we know anything about mental health and stresses and things like that, that's not always the case. And I just want people to remember you can't selectively choose when to be an advocate or when to stand on that soapbox of prioritizing athletes.
I was going to jump in here and respond to, your point on mental health, but we have Stak here, right? So I think the audience want to hear more from Stak on this than me right now. Stak, on y'all popular show, Dope Show, All the Smoke, you guys talked about this weeks ago. I mean, you guys were ahead of this. And you talked about, what he needs to do is make sure the guys around him aligns with his vision.
Absolutely.
So that's what you said a while ago before this. Has anything changed for you? Would you say anything different today?
No, bro. I mean, I've been in this situation, bro. I've made mistakes, in the strip club when I was in Indiana, protecting a teammate. And people judged me, because I had the brawl in that situation happen back-to-back years. So people judged me and immediately counted me out and called me a thug and just said all these things about me, but I knew I wasn't that. And I wasn't even close to being the face of the league like Ja Morant is. So I just, from my side of it, is I'm speaking from experience. A lot of people can say a lot of things But my advice to him is to just, it's a mistake, bro. And every time you make a mistake, you know, you have to learn from it, and that's what matters most. What you do after the mistake. He's a young kid. Everybody made mistakes at 23 years old. Everybody just not a millionaire with cameras on. We all make mistakes at 23. So I want him to understand that, yeah, it's a mistake, but don't let the world beat you down and make you think that this is the world coming to an end for you. You made a mistake, deal with it, and you know, because shots actually went off. You know what I'm saying? When I was involved in my situation, right. It was just him showing one on the Instagram, and he just had a couple of situations off the court, which is starting to get too much. I think he's gonna get a hold of himself. He's a smart kid, just like she said. He understands what's at stake. I think his dad needs to speak up more and be more of a mentor and a guide than a fan and a friend to him right now. I think a lot of people see that, and for me, he's a great kid. He's gonna be all right. I wasn't finna come from the side of kicking the kid while he's down, because I've been in that situation. I know you need support, and I know he's not that type of kid. So keep your head up, Ja, man. It's a mistake. What matters most is what you do after, and I think he's going to come back and find colors.
Love that.
Yeah, and I think people failed to realize that two things can be true at the same time. That Ja may need better people around him. He may, you know, everybody may be getting lost in the sauce a little bit. You know, as right. You know, Stak, Brandon, as you know, when you come from a certain environment, and this is not to go ahead and dissect where Ja's from, where he's not from, when you just come from an environment of not having, and all of a sudden everything in the world that you could ever want and imagine is now at your feet. You know, people get lost in that sometimes. The clubs you couldn't get into before, now you just walk in. You know, the restaurants you couldn't get a reservation for, now you can get it. The girls you couldn't get before, now all of a sudden want you. People get lost in that. So two things can be true. He can be getting lost, right. And the people around him can be getting lost in that. But on the other side of that, there may be real underlying issues and stresses that he is not dealing with well. And it's better to acknowledge those things now than down the line when it's too hard to correct those behaviors. You know, you look at all these instances, it's a domino effect. People just don't go out of their way allegedly beating up teenage kids because of a pickup basketball game. You know, people just don't go around waving guns and hanging out, you know, shirtless in the strip club. There are things that are not normal behavior. That does not negate that the behavior is not correct. And that does not negate the fact that as an NBA player, you're held to a different standard than a regular person. But that also doesn't negate the fact there may be some serious underlying issues there that I think people are ignoring and focusing more on the actions than what may also lie underneath. Two things can be true at the same time.
Well, you guys know I'm a champion for mental health, right? And big advocate. I've been raising awareness on this topic for over 10 years now. And I will say this, all right? I don't think this is some type of mental health challenge. I don't think this is some type of disorder. I don't think he needs to go to a McLean hospital the way I did for 3 months in an outpatient program and go through dialectical behavior therapy, or, you know, go through a neurological evaluation or clinical evaluation. What this is to me, Stak, this is a behavioral challenge, right? This is, if it is a disorder, it's, you know what, I'm young, I got money, I got freedom, I got access, and I'm learning how to deal with this. So I do love how we're handling these conversations right now. Jalen Rose, to me, handled it the best, right? Because we see a lot of athletes, professional athletes, transition to TV, and we go out there and we act like our shit don't stink. We go out there and we act like we never sat in those seats, right? Shannon Sharp was one of those guys that came out, you know, a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't know where he was coming from. Obviously, he had some type of information, because I was like, where is he coming from with this Jaws trying to be a thug and Jaw this and Jaw that? You know, obviously there was this situation with the laser, and there was a situation with the sideline and all those other things, but you could tell he had more information. I felt like he didn't respect the fraternity of the player, meaning like, we know we all made mistakes. So I love how Stak is handling the situation today. I love, Ashley, what you just said. But the reality is we do have a responsibility as the OGs of the game to actually hold our guys accountable. But it's how we do it publicly, right? Like, if you're not willing to pick up the phone and call a dude and say, yo, let me help you, or this, maybe you should think about it this way, then you don't need to say anything publicly. If you're not willing to just message a guy or try to infiltrate his camp somehow and say, listen, like, I've been through these situations, you need to keep your mouth shut. But from a public standpoint, we do have to have the conversation around accountability, right? Like, we've all been there. I've lost over $100 million in career earnings, whether it's through contracts on the football field or brand deals, because I got in trouble in my 20s. Ja Morant, you can't afford to do this, right? As parents, Stak, as parents, our job is to make sure our children are better than us, right? There's an argument that we have that same responsibility as players, right? So, like, Ja shouldn't be making these mistakes because Allen Iverson made those mistakes. Ja shouldn't be making these mistakes because you made those mistakes. Ja shouldn't be making those mistakes because I made those mistakes. Adam Pac-Man Jones made those mistakes. Stak, right? Every generation is supposed to get better. We have this information. Social media is everywhere. Like, you can't do that. Like, that was a bonehead decision. And hopefully, Ashley, like you said, he's taking his time and he's actually really working on himself and reevaluating everything. So, Stak, my question to you is, what responsibility do we have as professional athletes, former pro athletes, to actually have this conversation publicly? And how do we do it?
Well, one, you got to put the blame on the NBA. The NBA has pushed the veteran guys out. When I came in the league, when I was on San Antonio team, yeah, you had me, Ginobili, Tony Parker, Speedy Claxton. You had Malik Rose and Tim Duncan, young guys. But we had a crazy core of veterans that was 1 year away from retiring. Steve Smith, Kevin Willis, David Robinson, Steve Kerr, Danny Ferry. And I'm saying that to say we had guys in the league that was mentoring us. They knew it was our time to shine. They was on the bench, but they still was giving us game. We had veterans to help us along the way. They don't have that in the NBA now. The only vet in the league right now is UD down in Miami. Miami know what they're doing. They keeping them there for the right reason, to mentor guys, to be there to help the coach these guys and relate to these young guys. Teams don't have that. We had that coming in, and when we made mistakes, we was held accountable. Our teammates held us accountable. When I got in trouble in Indiana, Reggie Miller held me accountable. Jermaine O'Neal held me accountable. You know what I mean? So they don't have that in the league right now. So a lot of these guys don't have leadership. They're actually learning by experience, and a lot of times that's not good, B. That's not good at all, because you make a lot of mistakes, and sometimes you can't come back from them. I was blessed to be able to come back from mine, and that's what we telling Ja. Okay, Ja, yeah, you made a couple mistakes, my guy, but now it's time to pull everything in. Now I'm starting to get the right people around you and make the right mistakes, because you got to remember, you just got to shoot. You could be the face of the year, face of the league in a year or two. You got a lot of great things going on. Your team right now is sliding. If your team is sliding right now, and the way with KD going to the Suns and all this, y'all not looking as good as y'all supposed to look in the West. Y'all don't make the playoffs, it's going to look worse on Ja. Even if he come out and play well, everything he had going on going to look like they put a cloud on the team to say they wasn't playing well. So he has to get out this funk now. I don't think, and you know what, to me, you said it wasn't about mental health, B. That's why I spoke out about it, because I've been there. When I got into my little situation in the brawl, they tried to make me say I need to go see somebody and talk to somebody. Listen, I wasn't crazy when I went to them stands. I was in my right mind. If everybody look at the tape, I ran up to the stands to grab Ron. But when I grabbed him to get out the stand, somebody threw another beer in his face. So I was sane. I knew exactly what I was doing. So I didn't need to talk to nobody about helping my teammate. He know the mistakes he's made. He don't need to talk to nobody. He just needs to make the right decisions for his life and for his career and for his child that's always at the games, that beautiful child he has. Make the decisions for them and stop being so selfish. That's what it all comes down to. John's being real selfish right now. He needs to think about the people that's dependent on him. He needs to think about the gifts God gave him, the position he's in that people would die to be in, and look at that and look in the mirror, understand, bro, you're ruining a great position that you have. Everybody would die to be in your shoes. Take care of your child, play basketball, be one of the all-time greats that you possibly could be, and let everything else handle itself. But now at this point, you don't need to talk to nobody. You need to look in the mirror and understand what's at stake.
But I think that if he is not, let me first clarify, I don't want to say that it's a mental health issue, and if that's the implication of my words,
no, it wasn't.
Okay, let me just make sure I clarify that.
No, not at all. Not at all. I was just saying that because B said that. Because B said they tried to get him to speak to people when he had his little situation.
I do think, though, that when you go from, like I said, having nothing to having everything, sometimes that some people don't know how to manage that. And before it starts in an NBA locker room, before we start talking about vets, I think it starts at home, and it starts with Ja, and that's a point that I think we can all agree on. I think that most importantly, something that I learned very, very young And my parents instilled this in me. And, you know, as athletes, you know, this is kind of, you want to take everybody with you. But one thing I learned, everybody can't come. You know, some people are not meant to see past the season with you. Some people are liabilities and not assets. And I think that Ja may have to do some self-reflecting of the people around him and say, who's adding to where I am at this point in my life and who's subtracting. And whoever is taking and not giving can't stay, because there's too much on the line. There's too much that you have worked for. To go ahead and risk it just so that you can say you have your day ones with you. Sometimes your day ones are the worst people to be around you. But sometimes your day ones don't want the best for you, because I can tell you right now, if your day ones were your day ones with the best intentions for you, when they saw you waving that gun shirtless in the strip club, they would have taken that phone from you like that. Been like, bro, what are you doing? We're not doing that.
But that's,
stop.
Listen.
And the fact that they didn't, the fact that nobody pulled that phone from him or took that gun from him should be a light bulb in his head and say, who do I have around me?
Because we miss those opportunities, Ashley and Stak, right? Like, I want to say this. First off, having these conversations publicly actually expedites the process of him getting it. And all these other players, include like even me back in the day, when you're sitting there and you're seeing the world talk about you, you're on a ticker. That's a surreal moment, man. That's an out of body experience. Where you're like, God damn, everybody's talking about me right now. So it forces you to look in the mirror. So hopefully this is a defining moment for him. I will say this. I think social media, there's a huge conflict of what a brand is today, right? Because back in the day, Stak, before there was a TikTok and Instagram and a Twitter and a Facebook and all of that, players, there were certain things that we didn't say or do. That's why Allen Iverson was so dynamic and different, because he actually was one of the first to actually just walk in his true, authentic self. But what happens is you jeopardize your career earnings, or you know, being able to maximize your career earnings, and also brands, because brands don't want to see that. A gun, like a lot of us got guns.
Right.
A lot of us say the things that he's saying on Instagram, but these athletes today, this generation, Stak, bro, like they be saying the craziest things, doing the wildest things on social.
But Ja, like, you're the leader of the pack. This is your crew. This is your entity. This is your business. You decide who stays and who goes. You hire and fire. And I don't mean that literally. I mean, you are in charge of the brand of Ja Morant. And if someone is a liability to that enterprise, if they are not an asset, if they are not adding to your life in a way that's conducive for all the things you want to accomplish, that you want for your family, that you want for your daughter, they have to go. And that doesn't make you not down. That doesn't make you not cool. That doesn't make you, you know, oh, you Hollywood now. That makes you somebody who prioritizes everything that they have worked for before anything and everything else. At this stage of my life, at 30 years old, if you are not adding to my life, if you are taking my energy, if you are jeopardizing opportunities, or if you are just not a healthy person for me to have around me, you have to go. And Ja, you have a lot more to lose than the people that you surround yourself with. Move, hire, rehire, fire accordingly. And nobody can tell you otherwise. You are the leader of the pack, not them.